Hey, what's happening? It's your boy, J.G. Tate. That's me. I'm the publisher / Commodore at auburnsports.com. Today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Mike Bobo. Auburn's offensive coordinator spent some time hanging out a little bit virtually with the reporters on the Auburn beat today, talking about his team, his quarterback, some of the new wide receivers, and his offensive line. It was about a 25-minute conversation, but we're going to whittle this thing down to about 3 or 4 minutes for those of you who are kind of on the run, just kind of give you an overview of the things that Bobo was talking about today. So let's go up to our main screen here and get that bad boy going. We're going to look at a few clips here, 1, 2, 3, I believe, that I think you guys need to hear based on what he had to say. The first one is going to be a little bit about Bo Nix. I know that Bo has been taking a little bit of criticism. Had a fine freshman season, didn't show a lot during his sophomore year, and everybody's kind of hoping that Harsin and Bobo together can kind of unlock a little bit more potential out of Bo. And the things that Mike Bobo was saying today about Bo, I think will get you guys a little bit excited. Here's a clip.
The last one, being vulnerable, which I think is a good trait that Bo and I have talked about being vulnerable, taking coaching. I understand. I'm his third coach in 3 years in that quarterback room. But being vulnerable and listening to the way that we want to do things, the way Coach Harsin has it structured, and constantly trying to learn. So I've been impressed with Bo. He's hungry. He wants to win. He loves Auburn University. And I think all those things are important. And it's a guy that started 2 years here, but still being vulnerable and understanding that he still has a lot he has to work on, and I think that's a credit to him and how he was raised. And I'm excited to be here and coach Bo Nix.
All right, there you go. It's interesting to kind of hear him talk about Bo Nix being vulnerable. Like, that's not necessarily the kind of phrasing that you would think normally you would want from your quarterback to say. Usually it's like, he's tough, he's great under fire, he's very accurate, he always rises to the occasion. Those are the things we're used to hearing. And for an offensive coordinator to say, hey, I kind of like the fact that he's being vulnerable. He's showing some of that vulnerability. It sounds weird, but honestly, if you're going to be a great leader, you've got to be willing to show that, hey, man, I didn't do that right, but I'm learning too. And I would probably describe it more as humility, but, hey, he's the offensive coordinator. He can do that. So I think it's really interesting to see that Bo Nix indeed is kind of being that guy, that he's not just leading by example, not just leading with his words, but also kind of making it a collaboration with a lot of the other players. And I think that's the best way to kind of rise above and become a really good leader. The second clip I wanted you guys to hear today was a question from our friend Justin Hokanson about if Bobo would define what downhill means to him, because Bobo and Harsin have both said that they definitely want to have a downhill running game. You hear that a lot in college football and also in the NFL, heck, in high school as well. And a lot of times we kind of know what that means. Load up, make your tailback like a steam engine, and just pop people in the mouth. But it's a little more nuanced than that, and I think Bobo gave a great answer on that today. Take a listen.
I think it's a physical attitude. It's not just a running back, but it's the offensive line, it's the tight end, it's the receivers that, I believe that you have to be able to run the ball to get where you want to go, and that's ultimately to win a championship and be able to run the ball, late in football games, when they know you've got to run the ball. And that's a mentality. Downhill physical run game, to me, is a mentality. Are we going to have plays that run on the perimeter? Yes. Are we going to have plays that run in between the tackles? Yes. But it's a mentality of your running backs. And when a running back has a mentality that, sometimes at some point I got to get downhill and get behind my pads and get the dirty 2, 3, 4 yards, and I'm jumping my tail back up and I'm getting in the huddle, but I'm finishing runs. I'm downhill when I finish a run. That excites everybody on the offense. That makes those offensive line and tight ends want to block for that. Those backs, those receivers want to block because he might break one, and we're downhill. We're downfield blocking, and that leads to excitement. To me, it's a mindset that, we're going to be physical in the run game. And it's not necessarily we're going to run between the A-gaps every snap. It's just a mentality of how we're going to play at all the positions offensively.
All right, so there's an interesting definition. I think he shows a lot of insight into what he's trying to talk about, that it's about finishing runs and kind of just being an attacker and an aggressor It's, again, not through the A-gaps per se. You can do downhill running really as wide as you want from sideline to sideline. It's more about a mentality, and it's not just the tailback. It's about everybody involved, and I think that's interesting to think about. It's something that I think they're going to be accentuating for sure on offense. Our third clip of the day, our last clip of the day, was a question from a man, Brian Matthews, here at auburnsports.com, asking about the offensive line. Obviously, there's a lot of questions there. We don't exactly understand, outside of Nick Brahms at center, exactly who's going to be filling these positions. We know Auburn's been short, not necessarily in stature, but just in quality of play at both left and right tackle the last year, maybe a little bit longer than that. We haven't seen like a transfer come in or a five-star signee where you're like, oh, they've got it solved. So they're still trying to mix and match a little bit. And Bobo provided some insight into exactly how they're trying to whittle this thing down. We'll talk about it at the other end.
A number of guys that are working at tackle. We got Broderius Ham, we've got Coffee, we've got Troxel, we got Zaire. Council has worked some at tackle. And to be honest, we just put the shoulder pads on day 3. We're running around in our underwear days 1 and 2, and everybody looks good in their underwear, and you can't really block the guys you want to when you don't have pads on. So I thought, they're competing, they're working hard. That's the process that we're trying to figure out. We're trying to get our offense in and move them around in positions, and then as we get closer to Saturday as our first scrimmage, then we'll go out there and let them play and compete where it won't be so much structured like there is in practice, and see how guys go, and then we'll grade them, and we'll talk about it, and we'll come back, and we'll see who we want to put where going into that second week, and then after that second scrimmage, we'll figure out who fits in what position. But those are some of the guys that are working there right now. I don't think I missed one. Colby Smith's a young freshman that has size. Langlow's worked some at tackle too. So we worked a number of guys there. I don't think it's fair to say, hey, this guy's ahead of this guy right now. We're just getting started really in the nuts and bolts of them having to block people with pads on and them allowing them to have pads.
All right, interesting to hear there. I mean, some of those names at offensive line, particularly tackle, you're used to hearing Austin Troxel. I was surprised to hear Langlow, though. Also surprised a little bit to hear Broham, because I felt like Broderius Ham, you look kind of his body, he's just a hulking monster. Personally, I think of him as like a guard. He would probably describe himself as a guard. But at this point, I think they're just looking for guys that can hang on to blocks and be kind of stout at the point of attack. So he's certainly in the mix there. Killian Zier is another guy, junior college guy that he was injured last year, wasn't really a factor. And then 55, Brendan Coffey, that played a little bit at right tackle, also a junior college guy that came in last year, but it just never seemed like he was ready to help a lot. When he got in there and he played maybe 10 snaps every other game, he didn't grade out very well. And that's fine. Everybody's kind of at their own. They're progressing at their own pace, but interesting. They've got a lot of guys. Sounds like Bobo is encouraged by them on an individual level. It's just a matter of finding the guys that are actually going to fight for you, who are going to be dogs on the outside. They're just going to try to figure out who that is. So that's your basic look at the 3 most important things we heard today from Mike Bobo about Bo Nix's vulnerability and his rise as a real leader on this team. Also, his definition, Mike Bobo's definition of downhill running, I thought was interesting, and also looks like he's got some ideas, but he's going to have to try them in scrimmages for offensive line. He also mentioned Tavares Dawson, who is a true freshman wide receiver who's been playing well, and he had some nice things to say about him. Also, Malcolm Johnson Jr., who's coming back as a sophomore this year. He described both of those guys as having elite speed. So there's a lot going on the offensive side of the ball. I just gave you a quick snippet of the things that I thought you needed to know most to kind of keep it quick and easy. Appreciate you guys listening. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you guys down the road. Peace.